was built in 1928. It weighs in at 84 tons, which makes it the largest narrow gauge shade ever built. On your trip down the hill and back up today, it'll use about 400 gallons of water and 40 gallons of fuel oil. The Matera Sugar Pine had 5 locomotives like this one. However, theirs were what they call wood burners, and ours is what's called an oil burner.
Wood burners.
Maybe take a look at the ground on either side of the tree here. You'll see a big green plant that has otherwise the bare clover. It grows everywhere and has a sticky residue that'll get into your clothes, and good luck washing it out. Actually, what it does is stays in your clothes and it produces a very foul stench. The lumberjacks hated that smell, so they called that stuff mountain misery. Apparently nobody had the courage to tell the lumberjacks that the foul stench coming from their clothes was probably not actually because of the bear clover, but that's the story. The Native Americans that lived here would pick the bear clover leaves, and they would mix them with hot water to brew a tea. They used that tea as a medicine. It was a good painkiller. They used it for aches and pains and headaches and fevers. The reason it worked quite well is because it actually has a chemical in those leaves. It's called acetylsalicylic acid. There's your tongue twister for the day. Acetylsalicylic acid, though, is better known as aspirin.
Aspirin. Acetylsalicylic acid.
As we drop further down into the forest, I'd like you to use your
45 minutes, that's why
going back about 120 years ago. Imagine yourself as an employee of the Matera Sugar Pine. You would be one of about 800 men who worked very long days filled with hard work. Worked about 6 days a week, 10 hours per day, and likely be paid a wage of about 10 cents an hour. If you happen to be a skilled worker, such as a carpenter or a machinist, you'd make a bit more at about 30 cents an hour. We do quite a bit better these days. This year they're paying me 50 cents an hour. So that's not bad. So the more trees they cut down, the more money they made. They would cut trees down by hand using axes and 2-man cross-cut saws that they like to call misery whips. After they cut a tree down, they would saw it into logs that the railroad was able to handle. The railroad then took the logs from the forest and delivered them down to the sawmill. On a typical day, the mill expected to get about 80 carloads from the forest. That's about 4 to 5 train loads per day. On a yearly basis, the mill is known to have averaged a production of about 50 million board feet. And travel around the world with it more than 10 times. Once the railroad had delivered these saws to the mill at Sugar Pine, they were sent through the mill and given what they called a rough cut. The logs would be basically filled into boards of various lengths and sizes, but they were not yet in any form that was ready to be sold to the public. The rough cut lumber would then be floated all the way down to their finishing mill. They used a flume to get it there. A flume is a wooden trough that's filled with running water. The flume was 54 miles long and it went from Sugar Pine all the way down to Matera. So they would float the rough cut lumber down to Matera. When it arrived there, it was placed in a yard to dry for a period of time. After that, it was sent through the finishing mill, and at that point, it was then in a finished form, ready to be sold to the public.
You guys want to say hi?
It was then shipped all over the world on the Southern Pacific Railroad. Some of the wood produced here was purchased and used in a restoration effort at the White House in Washington, D.C. was at one point the largest wooden structure in the world, and it took a lot of work to take care of it. Some of the men that did take care of that flume were called flume herders. This was a very dangerous job. The workplace was as high as 60 feet off the ground. They stood on a board that was mounted alongside the flume. Their job was to make sure the movement of water and lumber in the flume was steady. If there was an interruption in the flow of water or lumber, you knew you had a problem. You had to figure out what was going on and quite likely repair some damage to the flume in order to get things moving again. That flume also served as a source of transportation, not just for lumber, but for people. That is, employees on their day off like to go down to Madeira and spend their hard-earned money there. They would go to the mill and get some rough-cut lumber and assemble a very crude raft. They called it a flume boat. They would then toss that raft into the flume and hop on and hang on for dear life. They were going to go on a white-knuckled ride all the way to Madeira. It took 12 hours, and it was quite dangerous, reaching speeds in some places of up to 50 miles an hour. If you made it to Madeira alive, then you were free to enjoy your day off. But you had to find your own ride back to work the next day. Now, next time you go to a theme park, you get one of those water rides where you float along in a big plastic log. Feel free to thank the logging industry about 100 years ago for that idea. Now, coming down here, you haven't heard much from number 10. That's because we've been drifting downhill since we left the station. A typical work day in the lumber industry, number 10 would have pulled 20-car trains up 12% grades. Well, we are a 7-car train. We're going to climb a 9% grade, which is quite a steep hill even for a railroad. So number 10 will flex her muscles and show you a little bit of what she can do. So turn your ears to her and listen to her talk to you as we climb this hill. Once we get up around the top of the hill, we'll make a stop.
So big trees. I want to show them the trees. What happened?
This feels a bit. सेव हो जाएगी रिकॉर्डिंग पर जैसे पिक्चर्स अच्छी आनी थी अभी
Alright, we're now coming into our Danish picnic area. This is Lewis Creek Canyon. We're going to stop here for right about 13 minutes. We're going to put some water in the locomotive. You can get off the train and check out the forest. You can answer the call of nature if you need to, but please use the restrooms. Now, we do have a wedding taking place down here in a little bit. So there is a runner on the ground for the bride to walk down. There's also some decorations on the stage. We appreciate you folks respecting those and leaving those intact and looking nice for that event later. Over here, there is no smoking. And when you get back onto the train, let's make sure we don't take anybody else's seats, please. Again, when you come back on the train, please make sure you return to your current seat. Unless you want to make arrangements with somebody to trade seats, that's fine. Stay seated. I'll let you know when you can stand up here.
Yeah, just in case you
dogs. Watch your step as you exit the train. Listen.
चल आ गए चलो रुद्रा को घूमने दे देख क्या करता है हाँ आगे चलो
I have my bag. Yeah, you want to take a picture of this? Stand here. Stand here. Now let's smile.